Hi, welcome to Best Practices for Online and Blended Teachers through FLVS and Chandler County United School District. My name is Victoria Steele, and I'm going to be presenting this. We know that Chandler County is responsible for delivering some of the most high-quality options for students to achieve by offering the most choice available. And we know that those alternative options help drive things like graduation rates and student achievement and success. We know that individualized choice equals individualized education solutions. You guys have been using some online platforms as of late to deliver your students alternative pathways to find success and advancement. There are a lot of different pathways to proficiency. One of the things that we've got to take into consideration is that it's 2017, and at this day and age, it's not only written into law, but teaching pedagogy and basically how society functions, in that you're going to have a lot of different options in your choices of going to school. And there are lots of different options out there. And within your school district, you have wonderful traditional public schools, voucher choice schools, private schools, and we want FLVS to just be a part of that and capitalize on what we've already built upon nationally. So FLVS is going to be able to provide the framework for blended and also fully online courses provided through our platform. So just because you're going to get to do things differently and you don't have that traditional brick and mortar face-to-face classroom experience every single day to get to build those relationships, a lot of those challenges more often than not present themselves as opportunity. Remember that there is no one-size-fits-all education in 2017. There hasn't been for a long time, but certainly at this day and age, and certainly within your district and state, there are a lot of options out there. I had a great principal one year that said, you work within the field of customer service. This is when I was a teacher, and I taught for almost 9 years. You work in the field of customer service. You are selling a product, and people choose with their feet. And so parents and families have the opportunity to choose the right pathway that's right for their particular student. And there are certainly a lot of opportunities and options out there for them. So even though there may be different challenges and opportunities presented within this framework of having a partly online or fully online or hybridized system of instruction, know that we're here to support you, but there's still got to be this expectation of fair, equitable, and meaningful educational experiences provided regardless of the medium. So the things that are striving to be maintained within our public school classrooms are the same types of things that we want to maintain and establish from day one in our online programs. Because our students deserve the very best. They are literally our children. They are our friends' children, our family's children. They deserve the very best. And so FLVS gives you one way to deliver the best online or hybrid online way of course delivery in order to advance student achievement. So there are a lot of things to consider when we're talking about best practices overall in these situations for teachers, be it logistics, how do you organize the space you have in class to utilize it the best, how do I deal with a variety of technological issues within a very diverse student population. But one of the things that I specifically wanted to focus on with this presentation is communication. So communication both conceptually and in real concrete terms. What do you need to do? How does your communication impact your ability to connect with your students and help drive them through your course? So know that FLVS has lots of tools designed specifically to facilitate this process and hopefully impact interaction in a lot easier way for you. So one of the things you can think about in terms of communication is that you're communicating goals, or whether or not they've achieved proficiency or progress as necessary for their individual course. So I have it there, how do you know that your students are achieving their goals? I'm a science teacher and an anthropologist in background, and I look at things with a positivist perspective. That is, There's got to be real, tangible, knowledgeable evidence that can be gained through data gathering and experiencing things with our senses. So how do I know that my students have learned? I know looking at the data, and I know based off of my interactions with them, which again, if I had to see them every single day, I've established a different set of interactions, and I can keep in touch more frequently. But I would argue that your interactions, while they may be less, will still be perhaps more meaningful. So using the FLVS platform, teachers and administrators have immediate and real-time access to all of the progress monitoring data along the way that's going to help facilitate those conversations. We know user statistics. So how long have kids logged on? How long are they spending on different sections? And those are going to be important pieces of information when it comes to framing your conversations, but also communicating with your other stakeholders like parents and families, and also other counselors and therapists. We know that at any given time via the FLVS platform, you're going to have tools to help facilitate that communication effectively and easily, and great 24/7 technical support, which sometimes is hard to come by. Why is communicating with students ultimately so important? We know that through those communications, if we don't communicate with our students, we don't know them, and that knowing gives us insight into how they know and learn. So how do they engage or interact with the content that's being delivered to them? This goes into learning styles. What experiences got them here so far? What misconceptions might they carry? How has their educational journey shaped where they are at this point? So through those active conversations that are consistently meaningful is the key word right there. And those interactions reinforce this idea that there is a support system there to help guide students and their families to student achievement and success. So the idea in any classroom from day one, and any veteran teacher will give you this tidbit of knowledge for all my newbies in the room, you really have to work to build and establish the expectations, the high level of expectations you want in your course. Be that what happens in your physical space every day, how do they respect your time, place, and space, but also how are they going to respect and appreciate what you're trying to give to them via this content. And whether or not they need some assistance further than what you can just glean by them, submitting an assignment online. Yes, they can submit an assignment, but you have to also understand maybe there was something that they could have done differently and gotten to a higher level of proficiency. So could you have gone beyond your learning goal or your learning target by having something delivered to you in a different way? And certainly through this platform, there's lots of resources out there, which we'll talk about soon. So don't be afraid to address your course expectations up front. Frequent communications of expectations gives opportunities. So those are going to establish the trust system necessary to address all of those mistakes that might come along the way. If they don't feel like you're having genuine interactions with them, then they're probably not going to be responsive where they need to when you are addressing deficiencies. And ultimately, we want to allow our students to build upon successes rather than work against their failures. So your students need to know that you're looking out for you. So we're going to think about how we communicate can show them that, both in writing, digitally, and in classroom interactions face-to-face. So if you've worked diligently from the start to establish those high expectations you want to maintain, you also have the opportunity to address those opportunities when expectations are not being met. So establishing that consistent, frequent communication framework not only gives you that important documentation trail That's going to be important for those students and their parents and families, but also for other administrators and counselors. What other important individuals or stakeholders do we need to bring in on this conversation if students are not meeting class expectations for this course? And so that might mean that they are provided some additional assistance based off of individual learning plans or other individualized plans that might need to be further implemented or addressed. So if you care enough to show that you're willing to talk to your students frequently, it's not that you're building relationships, it's that those relationships are maintained. So even though in my picture I don't have the walls and the roof of the house, I know that it's a house because the framework is there. So that frequent communication provides the framework to determine whether or not your class norms are going to be maintained and established, both in those blended meetings where you actually get to see and interact with your students, but also in online forums. There are rules and norms. It allows for all of the important stakeholders to stay informed, including providing the documentation that you've done your due diligence to support your students. And students will feel supported throughout their journey if you seem that you care. So how do I establish effective communication with my students? How do I put all the pieces together to create that sort of tone that wants to drive success in class? So in setting the tone, first and foremost, keep it friendly, but keep it professional. Let it have both style and substance. Don't be boring. This is how they both learn about how you respond as a teacher. What are your teaching styles? But also, this is how you can convey that the information you're seeking to communicate is relevant and that it matters. So if you don't spend a lot of time communicating effectively, or you don't communicate at all, then they're going to think that those communications that you do have are not very important, when you know as a professional that having those frequent data chats is going to really inform you to help individualize your student based on their needs. So let them know that what you're seeking to communicate is relevant to them, it matters specifically to them, and that it really matters in their ability to be successful in this course. Make it interesting and viable to their course. So the third tidbit about tone is that your tone of communication always needs to offer reinforcement and support. So over and over again in studies, positive behavior reinforcement systems work to consistently drive positive changes in regards to academic behaviors, student development, student motivation, and they impact measurable factors of success, which not only impact students' ability to move on from your course and on to the next thing and hopefully graduation, but also teachers. So if you have positive reinforcement systems, how does that impact your EOC test rates? How does that impact how long students stay and ultimately complete the courses that they need to via this medium? So if you're interested in the science of positive behavior support systems, I provided one journal down there, but there's tons out there. You're going to have an opportunity to communicate with us later at the end of the program. And I'd love to share some resources about how to drive positive behavior systems in an online platform. There are some other do's and don'ts to consider with tone. If students are communicating with you and it really seems like they are struggling, don't leave them stranded. They don't need to be left alone on that island. Offer solutions. Be genuinely helpful. So you can link to all of those content-related strategies and tools, which are going to be available to you within the FLVS platform. You can link to any other additional materials that you know professionally to be helpful or useful to them in their situation. If they are reaching out to you, be genuine in your assistance. If you're disingenuine, you're not going to allow for that authentic buy-in, that authentic participation, which is going to help drive the tone you want to create and reinforce in your class, right? How does that shape class discussions? How does that shape their ability to professionally communicate with you in that environment? It also works to build that trust for support. They're allowed to make mistakes because we're communicating positively and effectively all the time. And it ultimately allows you to maximize the time you do have with them in face-to-face situations for those of you guys that are working in the hybrid blended courses. So maximize the time you spend communicating meaningfully. So one of the most important things to consider in communication is ultimately communicating their progress. It's really important for students to understand how they're doing in your course in terms that they can understand. So you've got to understand the data that's being actively generated and collected for you via those progress monitoring measures, organized by content or standard. So that may mean that you as a teacher have to break it down from teacher terms into student-friendly language. So what pieces or parts of that standard are they still struggling in? And how can you ultimately redirect and refocus through your interventions where they need to be redirected at a level they understand? Students have to be able to place themselves on those learning goals and progression scales. And without doing that, in student-friendly terms, you're not really helping them be able to critically reflect. So, what are some of the ways that FLVS will provide opportunities for data capture? Well, they're going to get opportunities for data capture, all of those important figures, throughout coursework completion. Students have access to the progress at any time. Therefore, go ahead and maximize student interaction by building upon the information you already have available. Good feedback is not simply regurgitation. If they've seen what they got on that quiz and you've seen what they've got on that quiz, then don't spend the bulk of your communication focusing on just the number values. Talk about the specifics of the questions and where in the standard they were deficient that they need to go back and redress. So don't regurgitate. Reinforce and build upon your data. And in order to do that, you have to really know your data. So by doing this reinforcement and analysis, it allows you to build their trajectory. So how are they going to get to where they need to go to achieve proficiency?
Mommy. Mommy. Yeah. Mommy.